Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Believe in Bears. My name is Joey Christopoulos with my co-host Corey Wootton. But first, today's episode is presented by BetOnline. Look, BetOnline is back. It's better than ever. And a new web interface for the rest of the NBA season has more props and odds and lines than ever before. And that is why BetOnline remains your number one spot for the basketball and football action this season. So what are you waiting for? Get on your mobile device right now. Sign up today. Receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. That is only when you use promo code BLEAV50, BLEAV50 to receive your bonus. Basketball, football, NHL, boxing, UFC, even your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline, the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming into the pod. Happy holidays and happy early New Year if you're checking out this pod. This is a Bears-Giants preview, Week 17. The Bears are coming off a very unlikely feel-good victory in a snow-filled game against the Seattle Seahawks. But first, let's bring in my co-host and maybe a man who, I don't know, maybe he has played pickup hoops with Michael Strahan before. That's called a tease in the business for a later edition of Corey's Stories. He's former Bears defensive end, Fox 32 Chicago's very own. Corey Wootton. What is up, Corey? Good to see you.
Oh, nothing much, man. Just recovering from the holidays, man. I gave in. I finally ate some meat. My stomach wasn't feeling too good. I'm definitely gonna get back on the straight and narrow. But it was a good holiday. The kids enjoyed it. Had my parents and sister out, so had a lot of fun. Got some new golf stuff to play with in this spring or actually this winter because the weather's been so great.
What is this? Peanut brittle? What is this? Toffee? I should try it. I should just try it. It was kind of my mantra. I was an open opportunity person over the holidays. And, yeah, you're right, man. We only got 2 weeks left in the Chicago Bears season right now, a season that is lost and a little bit up the track. And as of right now, we're taping this on a Wednesday at 12:30 Pacific time. So, to be honest with you, we don't have an answer for you at quarterback right now. Of course, we want to see Justin Fields if he is healthy. If not, looks like it's probably going to be Nick Foles, maybe again one more time for the New York Giants. Corey, before we get into your keys for victory, I was trying to come up with a funny way to say this. I don't know if this is a rootin' for Wootton here, but I want you to – we're going to pick just a couple of guys for Chicago Bears fans to key in on. Check out. Who do you want to see – who's one guy that you're looking forward to watch, looking forward to grow, and maybe someone that could be – if they perform well over the final 2 weeks of the season, can maybe help us next year.
Yeah, I think Kmet, that's a big target that's really improved over this season. Last year, kind of didn't play that much, really wasn't able to showcase what he can do, and he's already doubled his production from last year, and I feel like he hasn't even scratched the surface yet. You look at this year, 53 receptions, 539 yards, no touchdowns. I want to see a little bit more in the red zone, but I think he could finish possibly, with 650, 700 yards receiving, which would be a huge step up, and I think he could be a 900, 1,000 yards per year type of tight end. And he's an incredible blocker as well. So I think that was a great pick. And I think people last year kind of questioned if he was a right fit, a tight end, and what he's been able to do this year. And you're just seeing him get more comfortable out there. You see some of the the catches he used to have, and he'd kind of just go down. Now he's breaking tackles. He's, 5 targets, four catches, in the Seattle game. I really like what I see from the only thing, like I said, is the red zone. I want to see a little bit more from who's a guy you like to see.
Well, Corey, after I went 0 for 4 on my Kmet is going to score a touchdown this week in my keys this season, I'm going to go with a guy that I think has performed pretty well in an area where we've been at a weakness all season long, and I just want to see him continue to perform and earn a role next year. It's Thomas Graham Jr. Now, when he was drafted in the 6th round, last year I was lucky enough to have 670 the scores David Haw on my pod, and he really liked Thomas Graham because, one, he sat out all of last year, and when he was on the field, I think he's a Purdue Boilermaker, he played really well, and he actually has NFL talent, and now we're finally getting to see that on the field for the Bears right now, just getting opportunities. And, Corey, we've talked about this all season long. Jalen Johnson and who on the other side of the football? We've even said last year, 2nd-round pick, for the draft coming up, we're going to look at cornerback. I still think we need to target that area in the 2nd round. But all of a sudden, if Thomas Graham can perform well, we can walk into next year with something called depth at the cornerback position and not feel like we have to spend money on a Desmond Trufant. I mean, forgive me, but, a Prince Mukamura, that type of who is a good player. But that's just free agent dollars that can be allocated somewhere else. If you could find something in-house with Thomas Graham, he can maybe be the nickel corner or maybe a backup, maybe Kindle Vildor, one more offseason and can play a little bit better. And now you have a really young mix at cornerback. That's who I want to see there on the field. Corey, who got any other players that you want to keep an eye on?
Yeah, so there's two guys. I'm going to start off first with my wheelhouse defensive end Robert Quinn. Right, he's half a
Yes.
sack away from 100 career sacks.
The call
Has
of the
17.
year, Corey.
Yeah, exactly. I predicted it. In the beginning of the season. So he's at 17 sacks right now. His career high is 19. I think he will surpass that. There's 2 more games left. I think Puerto Rican Bobby, as my host Gabe Ramirez, who's also Puerto Rican, that's his Twitter handle. I think he's going to go over 19. I think he'll have 19 and a half or 20 sacks to finish the season. I think he's hungry. I think he's eager to prove that he is the pass rusher that everyone thought he was. And age is nothing but a number. So I want to see him go for 100 next week. I want to see him go for possibly 20 this season. I think that'd be huge after everyone thought he fell off last year. I knew he'd be back and motivated. So I want to see him. And then also Justin Fields, depending on if he can play or not. I know if it's not this week, he'll probably play the last game of the season. And I just want to see him improve. I want to see him get comfortable out there. I want to see him just have that mindset, be decisive in his decision making. I want to see him, the progressions, 1, 2, tuck it and go. I want to see him get comfortable. He's very comfortable with the deep ball, but I want to see him build some camaraderie with Kmet, Darnell Mooney, because those are guys that are going to be there next year. Allen Robinson, we don't know about that, but I just want to see him be comfortable to finish the season, whether it's this week, next week. I just want to see him finish that season comfortable.
Yeah, Allen Robinson told reporters yesterday that he lost 10 pounds being on the COVID list. I guess he was really affected by it. So, again, I don't really know what his availability is going to be like the rest of the season. And it just sucks. I mean, I don't mean to be uneloquent about it, but, I mean, just for him, a great player, a guy who's heading into the free agent market, and a guy that we don't know whether he's going to come back with the Bears. We'll see what happens. My final guy is kind of on that wide receiver position, and maybe we can start to transfer over to keys to maybe a Bears victory in Week 17, a victory that I actually kind of really want because Bears fans, keep in mind, we're handing over that first-round draft pick to the Giants next year. So let's just try and make that as high as possible. Let's get that in the 8, 9, 10 area instead of the 5, 6 area that it's at right now. It's Darnell Mooney. It seems kind of obvious, but the dude's on the doorstep of 1,000 yards. I think that's a great achievement for a guy who is, again, a 5th, 6th-round pick, a dude that works so hard at his route running. And honestly, kind of a ho-hum 1,000 yards. I mean, he had a couple really great – I think he had a back-to-back 100-yard games at one point during the season, but nothing really too splashy, which kind of makes you think this guy's ceiling could be maybe a little bit higher. I'm not going to go out there and say that he's like a de facto number 1 wide receiver in an elite offense, but I think he could be easily a number 2. You know what I mean? And I think he could be a guy that can get you 1,200 yards in a season. And part of my keys is – something that I saw last week against the Seahawks. Maybe you can talk about it. Maybe it was the snow. I just felt like the Bears did a good job at figuring out ways to get the ball into the hands of offensive players with room to run. I didn't see that a whole lot. Yards after the catch was really interesting. You talked about Kmet in the open field actually getting the opportunity to impose his will on a defender. I saw a little bit of that with Darnell Mooney too. I think getting them in a position to have yards after the catch, some yak, if you will be a big key for the Bears to maybe win in Week 17. What say you?
No, I couldn't agree with you more. And talk about yak. How about David Montgomery? I mean, he was impressive catching the football, and he just shows that he can do it all. He's a Swiss Army knife. I mean, he can run you over, he can juke you, he can outrun you, he can catch the ball in the backfield. He's a good route runner. And I'm excited for the future of the Bears team. If you think about it, right, a guy like David Montgomery, then we have Khalil Herbert as well. Cole Kmet's he hasn't even broken out yet. I think he hasn't even scratched the surface. Darnell Mooney is just starting to scratch the surface, right? He's had some issues with drops, but route running, his speed, his ability to get off defenders.
It's been impressive. Real quick, stay healthy. A guy who's a lighter frame coming in the NFL, and everyone's like, he's too skinny, he can't play in the NFL. Well, he's proved people wrong this year.
Yeah, because you remember a guy like Anthony Miller that was very highly touted coming out, right, and had trouble staying injury-free. So it's impressive to see. But I think this future for the young people on offense, I'm really excited for it. You look at those key positions, like I said, David Montgomery, Khalil Herbert, Cole Kmet, Darnell Mooney. Look at a guy like Bird. I mean, he's looked really impressive out there. That catch at the end of the game, the 2-point conversion, that was Odell Beckham-esque, holding it up there with the one hand. I mean, that's pretty impressive. So I'm really excited. I'm really not too worried about the way we finish the season. I know it'd be nice to finish a certain way, but I think the talent is there next year. I think it's just all about the coaching staff having that right offensive mind, to cater this offense for Justin Fields. I just think that's going to be the key for the future of this Bears franchise, especially offensively. I think we are pretty set on defense, as far as pass rushers, with Robert Quinn still under contract, Khalil Mack. If we can get something with Akeem Hicks to be back at the right number, like I said, a kind of 2-year deal that's more front heavy on that first year.
And can I throw out an Eddie Goldman bounce back year? I mean,
Yeah.
because I think I maybe am not nuanced enough to understand it, but I don't think he's been able to really make the amount of money that he's probably been paid this year. I think there's criticism going that way, and I think it's fair to have that. I think it's fair to, after sitting out a whole year, I think next year Eddie Goldman needs to come back and be a dominant force in the interior.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping. He kind of has that Robert Quinn effect. When you didn't, produce like you wanted to, you come back hungry. All off season, he's working towards that. He's ready to go, and he could have a breakout year, because we could have him and Akeem Hicks holding down the middle, with Robert Quinn coming off one of his best seasons yet, and then a healthy Khalil Mack. I mean, with Roquan Smith in the middle. Like I said, that front four, that's where you really wreak havoc out there. And I think if they could have that, and we could just be a little more gap disciplined, I think that's the key. I think I feel really good about next year, and especially if we can get a number one receiver, because I don't think Allen Robinson is going to be here. I think Darnell Mooney could potentially take over a number one, but like you said, I think he's a number two. And I think if we can get a true number one receiver out there, I think that'd be great.
Can I ask you a quick question before we go to Corey's keys? We're talking about Darnell Mooney and number one wide receiver, and everyone loves to obsess over you. You need that dominant number one guy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm almost starting to feel like with a young quarterback like Justin Fields, wouldn't it be better or equal, or where you stand on what if we got a guy like Darnell Mooney, and let's just say, for example, we sign a guy like Michael Gallup from the Cowboys.
Okay.
And let's just say maybe we draft somebody, we bring back Jakeem Grant, and we have a fourth there. Is it possible to have a complementary wide receiver room that maybe doesn't have a true number one? Or are you more the guy that says, Devontae Adams, we need to go get that guy? Because I don't want Justin Fields to feel like he needs to keep a wide receiver one happy all the time. I felt like that worked to Mitch Trubisky's detriment sometimes.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think sometimes I would rather, two guys that are really number twos complement each other. Two guys that could possibly go for 1,000 each, and they take the pressure off each other. Really good route runners. They can get open. They catch the ball when they need to. I think that's all it's about. I think a lot of times when you see a number one receiver, he's really good at getting off the presses. He's really good at getting open. Then the number two kind of just feeds off him because he's a little bit better out of the slot. But then if you have two guys that could potentially be number ones on a lesser team, come to this situation and are both kind of sharing that number one and number two role, I think that almost works better. And then you look at a guy like Kmet that I think next year is really going to have his breaking out party, because Justin Fields was getting really comfortable with him. And then if we can get him in the red zone as well, I think that'd be quite a treat. And then you talk about Jakeem Grant as well. I mean, showcasing what he can do as a playmaker, not only special teams, but he showcased that I can do that offensively too. So I think that could be something interesting, because we don't have the draft picks. We don't possibly have the capital to go out and get a huge number one, but a guy like Michael Gallup, that could be a huge pickup. And I think in this type of system, if we have the right offensive mind, getting everything together, I think we could really flourish in something like that.
Let's get to it. Let's get to Corey's keys. Week 17, Bears, Giants on the lakefront. Probably going to be a very cold game. We're not sure who's at quarterback right now. The Bears are to get a victory against the Giants, who are also a team that's completely up the track right now. What do you think is going to be one of those keys to get it done?
Stop the run. I mean, it seems like every week we have trouble. We let up almost 7 yards a pop, against Seattle. I mean, it was, Penny was out there. I mean, absolutely gashing us out there,
right the middle.
Comes down to gap discipline. I mean, he was 17 for 135. He averaged almost 8 yards a carry. I mean, it just seems like it's just the trend that we cannot stop. No matter how much focus we put on it, it just seems like teams, that's their aiming point at our team all game. Hey, they cannot stop the run. We came out with the W, but anytime you let up 7 yards a pop, you're usually not going to win many games. And I think the Giants, their kind of quarterback situations up in the air. Is Danny Dimes going to be there? Is he not? They're going to try to run the football. So I think we need to stop the run. It's something we've been struggling. I don't know if we need to do a five-man front. We need to do something because it's just whatever we're doing is not working. And you just see it week in and week out that everybody has a gap and guys are not in their gaps. And I think that's the key. That's the most disappointing part for me because Chicago Bears defense is stop the run, be able to get after them with your pass rush. The pass rush has been there, but stopping the run has not been there. So I look at it like if we would have been able to stop the run all year, Robert Quinn might be breaking Michael Strahan's record, in my opinion. Look how well he's doing. And then if Khalil Mack is healthy as well, I mean, it would be a thing to see. And I think our record would be a lot better because in certain situations we've been in the ball game, but when it came down to getting a stop, getting off the field, we haven't been able to do that. So I'm just hoping that we can stop the run and then be able to get after whoever is at quarterback.
And to hit it home again, it's a little bit of the chicken and the egg where if, Bears fan, you're watching a game and you're criticizing Eddie Jackson's tackling in the open field. Well, guess what? Maybe if you had stopped it before it even gets to Eddie Jackson, we wouldn't be talking about Eddie Jackson's tackling all season long. Because, man, he's been in a situation where he's had a locomotive coming right down the field. And
that's tough. That's tough for anybody.
His tactics and techniques are worthy of criticism, but still, it's it shouldn't even really get to that at that point.
Yeah.
And again, X factor. Who didn't play last week because he ended up on the COVID list after returning and having a great resurgent game with 2 sacks? Akeem Hicks. We'll say that again. Yeah. So, Corey, give us a second key to maybe a Bears victory in Week 17.
Real quick before I get to that second key,
please.
You talked about Akeem Hicks, right? Remember how we were talking about decision time with him and what to do? I think when he's in there compared to when he's out there, I think that proves that he's worth what I was talking about, a 2-year deal that's front heavy on that first-year deal. And then if he plays to what we know we're capable of, he stays healthy, you keep him for that second year as well, because he's an absolute force in there. Even after missing time, you see most people kind of, have to knock off rust, but it seems like no matter how much time he has off, he comes back and he's a force out there and everyone feeds off him. And I think he's a big reason, when we're able to stop the run, able to get that pressure inside while we're successful defensively. So I think he deserves to be back next year on that deal that I was talking about. So, and to get in the second key, limiting turnovers. You look at this game last week, right? Wasn't pretty. It was kind of grind them out games. We had 0 turnovers in the game, and it gave us a chance towards the end of the game. And I think the times that we've really struggled in games is when we turn the ball over too much. You cannot win games when the turnover ratio is not in your favor. So protect the football, whether it's Justin Fields, Andy Dalton, Nick Foles, let's protect the football. And I think we'll have a, more favorable chance to win this game.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more. And obviously when you're, committing turnovers, the margin for error is so thin. But then with the Chicago Bears team that even last week continues to struggle in the red zone as mightily as it does. Now it's like the shaving onions in the Italian Goodfellas movies. That's how thin it gets even more.
Exactly.
So I'm right there with you. Before we get to our next segment, I do want to throw it out there to you. I want to get your opinion on it because it'll be something that will be talked about a lot. Mm-hmm. You're just talking about the defensive line. Are you a trade Khalil Mack in the offseason guy? And if you do, or if the Bears do entertain that, what is your palette of what they need to get back from him if that is possible? Because that thing is out there. I'm personally kind of against that because I think you're going to get a very motivated Mack next year.
Yeah, exactly.
Where do you land on that right now?
I really don't like those talks, to be honest, because like you said, I think he's going to be very motivated. I think it's going to be a type of Robert Quinn resurgence we see. And not that Khalil Mack, skipped a beat this season. When he was out there, he's productive. He started a little slow, but as the season got on, he got better. But I think, now that Robert Quinn is where we thought he would be, and Khalil Mack coming back healthy, I think that's going to be quite a force. And especially if we can get Akeem Hicks back at the right number, I think is going to be a great year for pass rush next season. But yeah, I guess, sometimes numbers work and if they could get first round picks or a first round pick, then maybe it would entertain and some money or something along those lines. But I think it has to make sense. Khalil Mack, I still think he's in his prime. So I think I would advise against it. But I could understand just because the Bears were kind of strapped as far as draft picks and capital. So I think, it could potentially unload some of that. but I'll be against that in my opinion. What are your thoughts?
Well, first round pick, you have to do it. You know, I have a Khalil Mack jersey in my closet. If someone offers a first round pick, you have to do that, right? Because it's where we are as a franchise moving forward. Justin Fields, that kind of capital, that kind of possible blue chip player you can get back on a rookie deal is something that you can't pass up. But I'll be honest with you, if it's a second or third round, I'm gonna probably be hesitant because, as you know, I am a Bears optimist. I'm slowly it's not that there's a fire, but there's a little bit of smoke under, and we keep talking about it. And I'm starting to piece all these different things together. Of the Bears are slowly, if they do things a couple things correctly, are kind of working themselves into a really interesting bounce back candidate for next season. Yep. Let's just kind of look at what we have right now. You just mentioned Robert Quinn and Khalil Mack, a motivated Mack who wants to get another contract, and Robert Quinn coming off a maybe a 20-sack season together. Yeah. It's interesting to me. Yep. You just talked about all the young offensive pieces that go around Justin Fields with Cole Kmet, Darnell Mooney, David Montgomery. You know, Jakeem Grant's going to come back. They got to make some moves on Khalil Herbert, got to make some moves on the offensive line. And then I'm also kind of looking at a new coach, which, I don't know, as a fan, I always feel like is good usually for a couple extra wins in that first year, just based on the whole freshness of the whole vibe. And also, honestly, where we're going to finish this year, our schedule is going to be easier. It just is. Like, our schedule, when we're going to look back at this year, I know that we did a lot of things wrong. We were talent bereft. We didn't have a lot of depth. We made a lot of mistakes. But you are going to look at the schedule and say, man, we played a lot of playoff teams this year in a season when we weren't ready to be a playoff team. And I think next year, we're going to get more people of our ilk, maybe trying to rebuild and figure things out a little bit. And that's a couple more wins right there. So I'd lean towards keeping Mack in hopes of having a bounce-back season with a new regime and maybe a first-year coach.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think at this point in the game, especially him coming off an injury, being up there in years, he's still not considered old yet, but he's getting up there. I think a lot of teams would probably be hesitant to give a first-round pick for somebody coming off injury.
They're going to lowball you.
Yeah, exactly. You know, because, hey, we haven't seen what he looks like. We don't know if because sometimes those ankle injuries are tricky. You know, I think he'll be okay at the end of the day, but sometimes, you know, some of these routine surgeries and things of that nature really work out, you know, not in their favor sometimes. I'm not saying this is the case at all, but you never know. Once you have surgical intervention, stuff is never the same. I don't care what anybody says. So I'm just hoping he recovers the way that we think, because it's standard surgery. Everything went well. Rehab's progressing the way we want to, but sometimes you just never know.
Corey, we're heading towards a new year, 2022. Can't believe that it's here. If I could ask you this question, the Chicago Bears as an organization, what should their New Year's resolution be?
Their New Year's resolution is to get an offensive-minded coach. For whoever's the head coach. And I think that will reap benefits that we will see out in the field, because that is the key to having a great offense. And that's something that Chicago has been missing for a while. I think the last great offense that we've seen from Chicago was Jay Cutler, I believe in 2014 or 15. I think one of those years where he had a great year. And I think that really wasn't even great in terms of the whole league. You know, it was good for Chicago, but I think the offensive-minded head coach that's a coordinator that calls the plays, that scripts for success for a guy like Justin Fields. And I always say Bill Belichick, you know, a guy like John Harbaugh, how he catered that offense to Lamar Jackson. And then he has a backup that's very similar to Lamar Jackson, Tyler Huntley, right?
And a backup, Josh Johnson.
And a backup, Josh Johnson, right? A guy that's a journeyman, that's barely played. His stats, you know, aren't the best. I just think that's the mark of a good coach, and I want Chicago to have that same type of coaching staff where you're like, hey, this is what I have, Justin Fields, and I'm going to script for success for him. I'm going to do what's comfortable with him. I'm going to talk with him. What do you like, right? That's what we're going to run, right? We're going to lean on this running game, but we're going to get him on the move, right? We're going to get some of those hard play actions. We're going to get some of those rollouts, sprint outs, boots, and we have David Montgomery as well, so let's set that up. I think that coaching, whatever coaching staff is in there, I think that's what it needs to be. And that needs to be the New Year's resolution, right? To have that offensive mind, offensive guru that's going to script for success for Justin Fields. And if we get that head coach, Justin Fields will be a perennial Pro Bowler every year. And he'll be one of the all-time greats, because I think he has something that not a lot of people do in this league, because he can run like a guy like Lamar Jackson, and he could throw it at times like a guy like Aaron Rodgers. I'm not saying he's Aaron Rodgers or Lamar Jackson right now, but I'm saying he has both of those skills and talents, right? He has to hone them in. He has to continue working on them. But I think if we can get that offensive mind, I think he's really going to flourish.
You're highlighting something that is just so crucial for the next, not just next year, Bears fans, 5, 6, 7 years down the road, because we saw what happens is unfortunately, the Matt Nagy-Trubisky pairing didn't work. And what happened? We kind of had one good year, but then sputtered and kind of, our tires kind of spinned in the mud for a couple of years. And now we're starting all over again and opening up a whole new, this is years we're talking about here. And that is so crucial. And I'm with you on it. I think the Bears' New Year's resolution should be, just kind of the vibe of, you can run on the treadmill all you want, but you can't eat Oreos the second you get off the treadmill, right? And here's what kind of happened. Go back to, say to yourself, when you fired Lovie Smith after going 10-6, are you closer to a Super Bowl today, or are you farther away from a Super Bowl today than when you were when you fired him, 7 or 8 years ago?
Yeah.
I would say that you're farther away. And if you're farther away, you have to say to yourself, we need to make some changes. And look, I'm not going to be the one to maybe specifically say what those changes are, because whatever it is, it just needs to be different than what you've been doing in the past, right? You need to step outside of your comfort zone and assess what you have been doing and try and figure out ways to do it differently, because the way that you're doing it right now isn't going to get you any closer to a Super Bowl than it was the year before, or the year before that, because Lovie Smith was the closest one that ever got you there. And I just think that hopefully, and I think that starts with that head coach, right? And getting it right and picking the right person, and maybe not picking the guy who just nails the interview with his smile and charm and I don't know, and trusting the ideas, the broad ideas. I think you're talking about someone that tangibly can show you not only on the field as well as on the whiteboard how exactly he's going to build successful offenses in the NFL. And I'm right there with you, and I hope that we do that. And that's probably what we're going to be, everyone's going to be talking about for the next couple of months afterwards, moving forward. Corey, it's time for Corey's stories.
Okay.
Back by popular demand. Here we go. Little people don't know, Corey is New Jersey, born and bred, so we may be playing a certain team that, was a part of his childhood growing up. I'm going to open up the floor to you, my friend. Just talk about any Corey story that you want that's revolving your homegrown New York Giants.
All right. So I grew up in Rutherford, New Jersey, which is right down the street from East Rutherford, next town over. That's home of Giants Stadium, where the Giants and Jets played. I actually grew up a Cowboys fan, believe it or not, because my dad was and my grandfather was a Cowboys fan. So you kind of follow in their footsteps. So I used to wear the Cowboys starter jacket. All my friends had the Giants, and we go back and forth because as a kid, the Cowboys won back-to-back Super Bowls, and in the '90s they were
Emmett,
kings.
Irvin,
Emmett, Michael Irving, Troy Aikman, the whole bit. But there was a couple Giants players that actually lived in my town. Michael Strahan being one of them, and one of his defensive ends on the other side, Chad Brasky, lived right next to my best friend. So one time my best friend was having a barbecue, right? They invited Chad Brasky because they were next door neighbors, and he invited Michael Strahan. So then we all got to meet everybody, and then Michael Strahan became a family friend of kind of all ours. And so he would come around sometimes. My house, play basketball, and one time we were playing and he dunked on me when I was probably 9 or 10 years old. Yeah, he dunked on me. I was playing defense, and he came over and said, boom, slammed it on me. Right. And he still talked about that when I went on his show when he had the Kelly and Michael show. So after the 2013 season, I was back home visiting New Jersey, and I asked him if I could get tickets to the show. And he's like, sure. And during one of the segments, he kind of called me. I said, I just want to give a shout out to my man, Corey Wootton, who I've known since he's a little kid. He makes me look small now. And, I used to dunk on him when I was younger or whatever. And it was pretty cool to see it on TV. Everyone was texting me and all that. But he's a great dude. And I've got to know him over the years. And, I talk to him every once in a blue moon just to check in on him, see how he's doing. I know he's a busy guy. But yeah, he's always been a down to earth guy, and as famous as he has been, through his NFL career, even in his broadcasting career now, still when I text him, he texts me back, and he's helped me out on charity events, signing balls, and all that. So really awesome. Good dude, And it's kind of cool that, growing up, watching him and, idolizing him as a player, and, then me myself getting drafted and being a defensive end as well was pretty cool. So yeah, Strahan dunked on me, and then he had that smile with the big gap in front of it. But I tell you what, he ain't dunking on me now. I'll tell you that. All right. And he ain't beating me in golf. Mark my words on that.
This is unbelievable. I'm just like imagining, because obviously growing up, I played all kinds of sports. I grew up on a block which had a lot of kids that played sports. We'd go out down, we'd play pickup and stuff. And I'm just picturing your block growing up, and there's just 6'6" dudes walking around everywhere. I'd be terrified as a kid. my little fuzzy self. That's crazy.
I know, especially like back then when you're a kid, like you're like, man, these guys are massive. And now that I'm that size, or even when I was playing, and you're like, now I realize what kids, when they look at you, like, oh my God, you're massive, you're huge, just because being that small, and then see a guy that's 6'6", 290. That's like Chad Brasky was, and then Strahan's like 6'4", 280, 290. Just massive dudes. So it's pretty cool to see that kind of transformation, because as a kid, your dream is to make it there, but everyone tells you, oh, when you're in school, your teacher asks you, what's your dream occupation? What do you want to be when you grow up? I said, oh, an NFL player. And they're like, oh yeah, what's your plan B? Because that's probably not going to work out, and you don't think that it's actually going to happen. And it actually does happen. You go to high school, and then you get a scholarship, and then you go to college, and you're like, okay, I'm just going to play. I'm going to get my degree and have a good job. And then you start to get better. And then you're like, oh, as a junior, I'm projected as a top 15 pick. You're like, whoa, okay. And then you see it, and then it's right there. And then, me getting injured and then having to come back for another year, almost being taken away from me. It was just such an incredible process, from the time I was a kid all the way up to making the NFL. It was truly a dream come true. And I think, people just think, oh, you were born big, you're born talented, you're born this. Like as a freshman in high school, I was about 5'9", 5'10", 160. So I wasn't always this size. I was a bigger kid always, but it took a lot of work, a lot of hard work over the years, a lot of determination, overcame things. And I think people don't understand truly how much goes into it, and especially when you're an NFL player, the things you have to do to get yourself ready every week, to be in the right mindset, get your body ready. I really loved every day, every experience I had. It was such a blessing. And it's something I'll never forget. And it's something, when people ask me, oh, what was it like? I'm always eager to tell them about my experience, because it was great. I lived out my childhood dream. I walked away when I wanted to. So I have no regrets at all, not even one letter, like Meet the Millers.
yeah.
Scotty P, you know what I'm saying?
Well, dude, that's such a great perspective, because I'm just kind of thinking, through my own experiences. I obviously, it's not like playing in the NFL, but like when you do comedy, or when you're performing and stuff like that, especially like in Chicago, and you start doing the whole thing of like, I never had like aspirations of like I wanted to do X, this, or whatever, but I always wanted to be in front of as many people as possible to entertain them and make them laugh. And it's almost kind of the same thing of like, like you'll never be on a TV show, or, you'll never do this or whatever. And just the fact that I always do have, and acting maybe is a different thing, or maybe it's similar, where there's always this pursuit of like, you're always going to do that thing because your competitive spirit is always going to make you be like, oh, I wish I had done more. I wish I had done that, or whatever. But the concept of achieving the goal and then having that, and for you, it's in the NFL, or for me, it was, I have a go on YouTube. You can see me on Showtime or Nickelodeon or whatever. You can never take that away from you. You know what I mean? That is always going to be with you, or like next to your name. And that's part of the hard work and sacrifice that you did. And I think it's really cool, man, because I have talked to other NFL players in the past, and I don't want to say that there's like a bitterness about it, but they do feel like it's a bit unfulfilled what they went through. And I try and be like, well, dude, you were in the NFL. It's pretty rad, man. You had the name on the back of your jersey and the decal on your helmet. Like, it's pretty rad. So it's cool of you to have that perspective. And I think it's helpful for other people to, whatever goal they're trying to achieve in life, is to feel the same way.
Exactly. I think, a lot of people feel a certain way when they're done playing, because a lot of times people don't go out when they want to. It's like the league kicks you out before you're ready, right? Like I had opportunities to continue playing, And I got to a point where I was just like, you know what? I am very satisfied with how my career went and playing the amount of years I did. My goal was 6 to 8 years after we had my daughter, put things in perspective. And I was like, I want to be around for a long time. I want a good quality of life. I want my brain to still be intact. That was one of my biggest fears. I never had any concussion problems, but I went out on my own accord. I've always thought of myself as more than a football player. And I know for a lot of people, sadly, football is their everything, and you take that away, and then life itself is meaningless for some people, and some people do it with coaching that still gives them that feeling and that fix, but other people it's a tough transition, so I kind of understand sometimes where you have this thing that's somebody's everything, and then it gets taken away from most people at 24, 25 years old, because the average career is like 3 years. And then you're like, okay, what else do I have to do? I'm a football player. That's what I know. So that's why you see some issues sometimes with that transition.
Well, and also I also feel like in these moments I try and simplify things. And in those particular cases, when you say that there are people out there that say, I'm just a football player, I try and do this little exercise where I try and simplify and say, like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a son, I'm a friend. In your
Mm-hmm.
case, you're a father. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Like,
Yep.
you're a human being. There's a lot of things when you start to kind of simplify it like that. I know it sounds silly, but when you do that, you do begin to realize that you are important to other people and interconnected
Exactly.
to other things in life. And it
Yep.
does kind of maybe open yourself up to other possibilities where you aren't, just a football player, even though you dedicated your whole life. I understand what regiment, when you pull regiment away and you have
Yeah.
all this free time, you're like,
Yeah.
holy shit. You know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
can't imagine that's easy. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But that good on you for just realizing that there's so many other things that you can be, you can take into life and just help people, and and you get to share your experiences still. How great is that?
Exactly.
It's
So
pretty
I love
rad.
that. So, right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh man, I love this edition of Corey Stories. Final score prediction, and then we're gonna get out of here. What do you
Okay.
got? Week 17.
You
We
know,
both picked them to lose. We're still tied, Corey.
yes, we're tied. So, I'm gonna say this is a big performance from the Bears, whoever the
Yeah.
quarterback is, because I think the Giants are truly struggling. I think the Bears are going to put up 34. I think the Giants 17. So I'm thinking that kind of vibe. I'm hoping it could be Justin Fields, because I know he did practice today. I
Yeah.
know he's kind of limited a little bit, but I'm hoping maybe he can get some experience out there. I know nothing's really on this game, so maybe he can just go out there, be comfortable. They kind of cater that game plan towards him, get David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert going. I'd love to see a Cole Kmet touchdown, but I think, a guy like Darnell Mooney's going to go big. I think Cole Kmet's going to be big, but I don't think in the red zone, because they kind of haven't figured that out. But I'm hoping him and Darnell Mooney go big in this game. And I think whatever quarterback's in there, I think 34-17 Bears.
Yeah, man. Damn it, I'm right there with you. This is a really good opportunity, not just for Justin Fields, but for the Bears to have a feel-good game at Soldier Field. In my opinion, just based on how they performed last week, I think there's a lot of guys on that 53-man roster that have a lot to play for, that are still still getting up and still making it happen. And I thought that week at least showed a little bit of character, that there are some players in this team that still want to finish the season strong. I don't particularly feel that way about where the Giants are right now, especially
Yep.
at their quarterback position. And I think this is a really good opportunity, very similar to that Bears Cowboys game at Soldier Field on Thursday night. What was it? Maybe was it last year, where they just blew them out from the beginning.
Yep.
The Cowboys kind of didn't look like they really wanted to be there, and the
Yep.
Bears had one of those just kind of magical offensive nights. I'm not saying it's going to be a magical offensive afternoon, but I'm right there with you. I do think they win by like 10 or more points.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a feel good, and I really do hope, I'm with you, I hope Justin Fields is a part of that, because I think it's a good matchup for him, and I think it's kind of lined up pretty nice. The Giants have had a hard time stopping the run all season long. They're not necessarily great against the pass either.
Yep.
I think there's some good moments here to
Yeah.
have some feel good building tape. Some good tape heading into
Exactly.
the offseason could come from this Giants game for sure.
Yeah. One key word I look for this week if Justin Fields is playing is just confidence. That's all I
Yeah.
want to see, is just him to get his confidence up, be comfortable in the pocket, right? Be able to look down the field, feel the rush, be able
And
to
just
step
rip
up,
it.
be able to make moves. If the pressure's coming inside from that right side, hit the corner, and then have the option to pass it or run for a first down. So that's what I
Yeah.
want to see with him, be decisive. I want to see him get his confidence up.
Corey, before we get out of here, I do want to kind of just bring it down for just a second here. I want to talk about something, and I want to implore people to maybe check it out if they feel so inclined after listening to this pod. As probably a lot of people that follow the Chicago Bears know, they lost someone. Chicago Bears lost someone from their family, from the ESPN community family too, as well. The beat reporter for the ESPN for the Chicago Bears, Jeff Dickerson, passed away at 44 years old. And I know that you got a chance to interact with him, so I want you to be able to say whatever you'd like in just a moment. But just from my personal perspective, for someone that obviously pores over stats and reads articles, and I'll sometimes go on the Chicago Sports app and listen to the radio station, and I will tell you that every single time Jeff Dickerson's name came up as an interview that was coming on there, I always listened to everything that he said. He always gave it to you straight. He was that guy that maybe if you listened to him in the preseason, he would kind of tell you which way the team is turning. Like I remember in 2019, he was just kind of like, training camp's been really rough. Mitch has been really rough. And all that enthusiasm kind of got deflated. And because we were thinking Super Bowl or bust, and Dickerson was like, oh, hold on a second there. And I just really appreciated reading his articles. He truly was one of my favorites. They do have, if you feel so inclined after listening to this pod, there's a GoFundMe right now. If you go to Parker's Fund, Parkers Fund, if you want to donate $5, $10, whatever you want to do. Obviously, that is Jeff Dickerson's son. Jeff Dickerson lost his wife 2 years ago, also to cancer. So Parker has lost both of his parents in the last 2 years. Really sad, really unbelievable. And the least we could do is just bring it up on this pod for people listening if they choose to donate. And Corey, I know that you were able to interact with him during your playing career, and it's just really sad, just really tragic and unbelievably sad. Just seemed like a really good person.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. You know, when I first heard the news, I was heartbroken. You know, because Jeff is somebody that I worked with over the years when I played for the Bears, always giving interviews, always had a smile on his face, was such a great person, had conversation with him, you know, outside of football arena, always such a positive person as well. Like you said, he lost his wife 2 years ago, and now, unfortunately, he lost the battle with cancer. And I just feel for his son and his family. Was such a great person. And I think, you know, when you look at all the people he's touched, you know, from the players to coaches, I think everybody, you know, when they heard about his passing, you know, went on Twitter, Instagram, you know, reposted something, put a you know, message, a post, just because of how great a person he was. And you know, sometimes in the writing industry, you know, some people are shady, this, that, and the other, but Jeff Dickerson was one of the really great ones. Really great person, and my heart goes out to his family. And I really you know, if you guys can, you know, donate to the GoFundMe, anything could help. You know, for son, you know, just really makes you put things in perspective. You know, me being a father, and you know, we talked about this right before the pod. It really puts things in perspective. Like, you know, health, you know, is everything in this world. And you know, every chance you get to interact with family, friends, don't take anything for granted. You know, because tomorrow's not promised. And you know, you just got to live your life to the fullest and enjoy every moment. You know, I think sometimes it takes hearing about someone's passing that we kind of take everything in, and we're kind of like, okay, you know, we're going to do this. We're going to live life to the fullest. And I think that's how everyone should approach every day, no matter what goes wrong or right, you know, because every day you have is a blessing in itself.
Yeah, 2022 is right around the corner, and I've been messaging with some people because I'm a person that in the last 2 years has a passion for this, and I love it, and I would really love to do this for a living, talking about sports. And I've been talking to a lot of people younger in the industry, and they've talked a lot about how they knew Jeff Dickerson in a way of from a mentorship capacity, and how generous he was with his time and his advice. And in a particular cases, I've talked to some people, and they've actually, Jeff Dickerson helped, you know, either connect them to someone or use as a reference or something.
Mm-hmm.
And for me personally, it's just like, man, when I'm on this journey, that's like so inspiring, because if I could only be so lucky to one day be someone that can help other people, younger generation like that, I want to do that. And he had the spirit and heart and generosity to do that. And it just makes me feel really cool when I hear people talk about that. And yeah, and from everyone, I heard something from Robbie Gould this morning about how, you know, NFL players, as you should when you get in the NFL, are kind of I don't know about skeptical. Maybe you are skeptical of reporters, but you're a little wary,
Yeah.
right? Like you don't know who's going to do you wrong, and maybe who seems nice to your face, and then maybe write something bad about you. And he just kind of said that everything Jeff Dickerson did when he presented himself to you, and what he ended up writing was verbatim. And he always wanted to do right and fair by you. And honestly, that's what the fans deserve. Like we just deserve the verbatim, you know what I mean, of what you guys feel and how you go about your business. And anything that is an angle or anything twisted to maybe bump up their own perspective or their own network is probably a selfish endeavor and doesn't do right by the NFL player. So the GoFundMe page for Parker's Fund, if you have a moment, go check it out. Or also Original Tees, I think, is doing something where they're making JD shirts. It's a bear symbol with JD on it. All 100% proceeds go to his son. Yeah, Corey, man, thanks for taking the time to talk to me about that. I know that you knew him, and it's just a significant loss, and it's just very sad.
Yep, exactly, man. So we got to enjoy it. We got to enjoy every day, right? Don't take anything for granted.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. And this is going to conclude the episode of Believe in Bears, presented to you by betonline.ag. Promo code 50% welcome bonus. When you use that promo code BLEAV50, BLEAV50. Lightbox Jewelry, also a sponsor that we're very grateful to have on us right now through the season. And yeah, Corey, man, end of the year. Happy New Year to you, man. To you and yours. I'm glad you got a chance to spend some time with some family. I'm glad you beat your sister in golf last week. And yeah, man, New Year's. I'm just very grateful to be able to do this pod with you, man. I love talking with you. And just take us home on another great pod, and maybe we'll come back and talk about a Bears victory next week.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, man. As always, man, Happy New Year. Hope there's many more golf rounds in this 2022 for you, right? Bring out the driving stick. That's the one. That's the one thing I got to improve on too. I got to get my driving accuracy down. I can't be Bryson DeChambeau sometimes spraying it. But I look forward to a great 2022, not only for ourselves but the Bears as well. I'm looking forward to a different regime taking over. Hoping we can finish this season strong. Justin Fields getting his confidence. Some of those young playmakers offensively, like we talked about, really improving, hitting their marks, 1,000 yards for Mooney going over there. Kmet, I would like him maybe to get at 700 if he can get it at that number and get in the end zone in the red zone. That'd be huge there. David Montgomery, I think he continues just to elevate his value in there. Khalil Herbert as well. I'm looking forward to seeing Robert Quinn maybe go for a career high in sacks, him to get to the 100 sack club. I think there's the season itself, there's not a lot to play for, but I think a lot of individual people have things to play for. So I'm excited to see that in the next few weeks. As always, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram at Corey Wootton, COREY, 2 O's, 2 T's, ON. And hopefully we will get another Bears win. I'm hoping this week against the Giants because they're not that good of a team right now. The quarterback is probably out. So hopefully we can get that dub. And like you always say, bear down as always.
That's right, man. Thank you so much for checking this pod. Be well, be safe. And in 2022, whatever it means to you, please just contemplate what it means to be good to each other. We need that more than ever. We'll see you next week. Thanks so much for checking out this pod.